Well, we decided we were going to plunge in and do a part two here because we kind of got really involved in the last one. So many conversations, so many ideas to talk about and find out where this leads. So, Scruff, how you doing?
I'm okay, Rob. Nice to hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hear you again, mate. Thanks for coming back on. Um, right, I'm going to take you. You and I are going to go skipping through the woods on a metaphorical picnic, if you like.
Sounds
Um,
good.
All right, so we'll find a little place where we can put a big checkered blanket out, and I'm going to put several little dishes on top of that blanket. In fact, I'm going to put five of them on, so we could arrange them as a pentagram if you like.
Yes.
And those dishes they're all going to have a label on them. So you're going to be able to choose from them, or you can choose them all, or you can go through them one by one, or you can just say, I just want to deal with this one or whatever. So
Okay.
the first dish we put down is titled music.
Right.
Um, there's one here called UFOs and Associated Phenomena.
Okay.
There is one called State of the World, right?
Okay.
And there's another one called Conspiracy Truths. And
Okay.
number five is Nature, Gardening, and Work Skills. So where would you like to tuck in?
Um, uh, the UFO and related paraphernalia would be nice.
Brilliant. Well, I was just listening to a podcast today. There's a guy called Sean Ryan, who's one of these ex-Special Forces blokes, and I got put onto him by this guy, Matt, that did the Australian for the first podcast I did on this series.
Okay.
Because he himself was involved with the forces down there, and he had a guest on today who was this Colonel John Alexander. Have you ever heard of him at all?
I have. I'm familiar with that name.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, he's gone all around the circuit with the whole UFO thing, and it kind of interestingly, he did state like one of the most important investigations that he'd been involved in with was Rendlesham, which of course popped up in
Yeah.
our conversation the other day. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yes.
that's quite the thing, isn't it? That one.
A well-known case. I remember ordering from Quest International the magazine and cassette recording of Colonel Charles Holt, and then I bought the book Left at East Gate, and I think there's a lot of things left in the Rendlesham incident itself in Suffolk and Ipswich, that near Ipswich, that was left untouched. And that's a massive, I mean, that's a massive avenue of discussion, but very interesting case. And yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, it's like the first one where you can hear about them coming up and actually touching whatever this was. But did you hear about the conspiracy? Maybe I don't know, because I've read about it from different angles, but somebody said that this was a recurring theme, that something was coming back there all the time, and that this was a big nuclear arsenal at the time for the US base over in the UK, and they had one
Yeah.
of the largest nuclear arsenals. Of course, we saw this interaction with UFOs shutting down a lot of stuff from the Soviets and from the US around the 60s, all that sort of time, and the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
Um, there was this conjecture that this had been something that had been going on and off and on for some time, and that the staff themselves were being microdosed with
Yeah.
LSD. Did you hear about that?
I did, and it's shocking. And there's a case. There's a guy. Have you ever heard the name Daryl Sims?
No, I've not. No.
He's a guy. He was actively taking implants out of alleged UFO abductees,
Hmm.
and he touched on it in a in a. I got a. I got some weird. Remember floppy disks for the early computers, and I got them printed out when I was at university. And there was something by a guy called Captain Bill Robertson, and he spoke of something happened at Alamogordo military base in the US
Mm.
where they had a nuclear silo.
Yeah.
This is what I was read. This was in print. I've still got it. But what interested me was he said there was effects on the base command,
Right.
and now whether I mean, what do we draw from that? Is that
But
is that a man-made thing, or is this something? I mean, the
what you mean,
you know, to,
psychological effects or physical effects? What was it?
well, I think even Bob Lazar touched on that in his in
Mm.
the documentary about him. But there was weird effects from these people. My mind is racing so fast. Sorry, Rob. Please,
That's all
please
right.
bear with me.
Yeah, I know this is
There's
kind of
a,
like this is like your mastermind because it's like your favorite subject in a way, isn't it? So
it's
it's
it's it's a massive interest to me and has been for many decades. But seeing that, on the flip side of that, there's a guy called Jim Keith, and he's wrote many books. He did one about underground bases and tunnels.
Yeah.
He did one. He did one. Yeah, he did. He wrote a book on alternative free. I'm sure you remember that from the 70s, you know, the 60s and 70s, the Great British Brain Drain and blah 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 and all this. But he mentions he knew a guy that was a TV installer of these boxes, like satellite, whatever things. And one day this guy was installing for a family a box, and he noticed it had a light on it, and he took it apart. And he realized it was a camera, and he was sacked. He was sacked. He was dismissed from the company a few days later. But that's that. But he said there was strange effects on some of the people that he'd installed boxes for around the US.
Right.
And that, I mean, that I can tie that in. I'm connecting that because I can tie that in with, you know, missiles being shut down, especially the nuclear sites, you know, which we know happened, and it's happened all over the world. But effects on people. I mean, the effects on many people that have even poltergeist cases, like the what anger, you know, at the base. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I apologize.
It's all right.
At the basis of all this, right? If you look at a book like, remember Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair investigated the Enfield poltergeist case in '76.
I know of the case. I don't know the book, but
okay. Well, Timothy Spall, a well-known British actor, he was in, you know, Ovid is in Pet, and he's played. He went on from strength to strength with his acting career, but he played Maurice Grosse or Guy Lyon Playfair in the Channel 4 adaptation of the Enfield poltergeist case. What really angered me when I finally got to see that short, those 6 episodes or whatever it was, they didn't even touch on many of the things that were happening to the people there, including BBC staff, policemen, social workers. Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair himself. And they didn't even touch on it. And it's like the whole UFO thing. 99%, a lot of stuff can be explained, but that 1% that can't be explained, that's where the gold is.
Do you think that there's, I mean, that it seems to be that the problem with the UFO phenomena is it's actually intrinsically attached to all of the other stuff, but people try to disconnect it and say, you know, it's almost the old sort of like the Martians in spaceships kind of dialogue. They've been pushing that for so long, but it comes with the kind of poltergeist activity with the high strangeness. And that's almost like the secret that's being kept from the mainstream. The mainstream is very much a gatekeeper for the presentation of the phenomena itself.
Absolutely. There's often a correlation between poltergeist activity and UFOs, which I find extremely interesting. There was a guy, he was an ex-retired police officer, and he was from Yorkshire, I believe. I can't remember his name. I've been trying to remember his name all day so we can talk about this, so I can talk about it a little bit.
Doesn't matter the name, it's fine.
Right, yeah. But him and his wife were investigating the paranormal for many years and wrote some really interesting books, a few of which I have. They, on their last book before he died, the conclusion at the end of the book, which was probably, I don't know, 91 or 92, he said there's a correlation between energy and stress. And stress seems to be, through my own experiences, which I've had in the last 20 years, I think I brought things on myself. I think I conjured this crazy things that were happening to me. I think I did that myself because I was massively stressed. And it's interesting to hear someone talk about the energy vibration of the human body, mixed with stress, mixed with the fact that we all know it's all electrical. It's all, you know, we talked about this the other day: stones, plants, trees, rivers, the earth, ourselves being made of carbon. There's a massive connection there. And at the end of that, sorry, I'm getting excited again. And at the end of that, you get fundamental scientists who say, if it can't be recreated in a laboratory, then surely it must not exist, which I find terribly blinkered.
Yeah, but it's all of this stuff is coming round to it's funny because we're sort of touching on the 60s and stuff like that. So the 60s almost got derailed by the whole hippie movement and by the Timothy Leary thing of like psychedelics and stuff. It's like they almost had a chance to get it.
Yeah.
And in a sense, they kind of, some of them kind of did get the picture, but we're becoming cyclical again now, and we're coming round that same kind of wheel, with the
Yeah.
modern use of psychedelics, DMT, all this sort of stuff, which is allowing the experiences to come to this same conclusion that everything is everything, and that it's
Yeah.
all made up of vibration and frequency. Which, you
Yeah.
know, it's how many times do we need to be told? Even this guy, the Alexander guy today, was talking about experiments that they did with white blood cells,
Yeah.
and whereby what they would do was involved himself, and voluntarily he gave some of his blood over, and they separate the white blood cells, and they keep it in storage, and
Yeah.
from 50 miles away, those cells themselves are influenced by his emotional patterns. So
Yes.
as a human being, we connect with parts of ourselves. I mean, his thing as well was like, and this is a serious guy high up in the rankings of the army, that's gone
Yeah.
through all of the top secret programs and all that kind of stuff too. He's no flake, and he's 86 years old and talking about this stuff toward the end of his life now, and saying what we know is that everything is to do with consciousness, you know, and he recognizes the fact that they're all coming around to the valet Keel sort of opinion that we're not dealing with extraterrestrial, we're dealing with
Yes.
interdimensional, or we're dealing with ultra terrestrial stuff that's all,
Ultra terrestrial. Yes.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what attracted me to the whole whole conversation, really, was stumbling upon these people that had the alternative take. It's the same as the things that got me into trouble. It's like I always want to find out where the dark area is that people
Yes.
want to talk
Yes.
about, because it's often it is, as I say, there's gatekeepers that are stopping you from getting access to the information at the basis of this stuff, and where you can really get the meat, and you say,
Yes.
okay, and all of it is designed, all of the stuff on top of that is designed as a distraction to keep us away from understanding the nature of reality itself, and understanding how consciousness works. And it appears
Yes.
to be the understanding that we are conscious creators ourselves, and that in a very real sense, we are creating the world as we go through it. And this is we're constantly being disempowered since we were children, you know, and generationally and through thousands of years, we've had all of this power taken away from us. We don't know where it is, we don't know how to use it, but we're starting to rediscover, hang on, something's wrong with this picture. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. One thing that you've just made me brain mechanism work is, many years ago I was in a naval town in England, and I was talking to two friends, and it was a private conversation, and I was talking to two friends, and we were talking about remote viewing, and I mentioned the name Hal Puthoff and Mel Riley.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know them names, or you're familiar.
Hal Puthoff was he was one of the first guys, along with Ingo Swann, wasn't it?
Yes, and they were finding out the best psychic people in the military, and they were teaching them remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole chapter in the book by Hal Puthoff where he went into the warm bath after being given coordinates, and he found himself in a vast, what he alleged was cylindrical, round, dark space, and he was convinced he was moving. He also mentioned there was masked, robed figures, and without even talking or any conversation, they knew he was there, and he knew that they knew that he was there, but there was no communication. He was otherwise tolerated. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he spoke about how he spoke about this. He said some really informative things, like it's not a threat from outer space. It's something that we've got in our own dimension, in our own universe, in our own dimension, in our own space, in time, in space.
Seems to be able to interact with us at its own will, rather than us being to go the other way yet.
Yeah, and I found that really interesting. I mean, the whole remote viewing program itself, anyway, is really interesting. How that guy, it was I think it might have been Ingo Swann who went into the warm bath with coordinates, and he found a crashed plane in the jungles of Africa. And when he brought it back to Washington DC at Fort Meade, where the remote viewing training program was based, he everything he wrote down after a few hours, everything he wrote down was later found by the military in the plane that crashed.
Yeah.
And that convinced, was it Eisenhower, to pour millions of black budget money into this remote viewing program. And that, I mean, yeah, it's just intensely interesting for me. And I'm getting excited. Sorry.
No. But I mean, funnily enough, you kind of like think something there, because I just started recently getting into the hemisync stuff, but it's not the first time. And that's the Robert Monroe stuff that kicked off all of this remote viewing training. So yeah. I don't know whether have you ever done any of that at all?
Well, to be honest with you, Rob, I've tried to remote view for the past 27 years. Unfortunately, I am unable to meditate because my my cognitive cerebral thought processes are so, there's one every second, and I cannot meditate. And you've got to be able to meditate to do this. I have astrally projected before.
Okay. Well, the thing about hemisync is that it's basically binaural tones. Like you put headphones on and you listen, and what it does is it synchronizes the right and the left hemisphere of the brain. Without you, I mean, you don't have to do anything, so you don't need to be practicing this and that, all the rest of it. But it's quite interesting, because the first time I tried that was when it was back in sort of like tape days in the 90s. And I didn't get it back then at all. But since then, I managed to get hold of one of the courses, the first course. Well, I've got access to them all just now, but I've been going through the first course quite carefully, and it's pretty amazing. Yes. And I would say, for anybody that's interested in altered states of consciousness, you're going to find something there which is, it's very powerful.
Does this have anything to do with lucid dreaming?
Yes. There's basically there's ways of being able to recall and to enter dream states. It also was the CIA program for remote viewers. Came through, and it's still practiced by the Monroe Institute over there in California. That's the thing about it. There's a slight sort of dodginess about it, because you go, oh, actually, the government's been involved with this. So people are going, oh, are there subliminal messages? And that's, well, no, there's not. No, there's not. It's just, it's very interesting to get into a state that you're not really used to.
Of course.
And I've found that. Actually, I'm gonna put something in here, because going back to the use of psychedelics and all that sort of stuff, and I'd like to conjecture that Evo Stick Glue was the ayahuasca of punk rock.
Yes, I agree. I'm thick. Evo Stick and Thixifix.
Yeah, but it's funny because people take the piss out of it, and people that didn't do it, obviously you don't do it because it's a mucky, weird fucking thing to get into. But I sniffed glue a few times, and like I would not underestimate that at all.
I'll tell you what, Rob, I don't do psychedelics. I've never done drugs. I can't even stand the smell of cannabis. I hate cannabis. I can't even stand the smell of it. But I have sniffed glue for many years. Not now. I mean, as a youth, as a kid, from like 77 probably to like 81,
when you were a young spacker.
Yeah, when I was a young spacker. And but the altered states that brought me were it was insane.
Profound.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was 100% addicted, as were a lot of my friends that I hung around with back then.
Yeah. And all this stuff about like machine elves and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, okay, there's the Toluene experience is pretty damn weird too.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely our drug of choice through being poor and poverty stricken. But we even ventured into, we'd walk around the streets at night looking for loose petrol caps on cars, and we'd even inhale the petrol. And there was one time we did it, me and two guys, one of them still alive, the other one's dead, and we thought we were Motorhead. No, really, I know it sounded bizarre, but we'd also experiment with Zoff as well. Can you remember Zoff?
I did. Yeah, I did Zoff in the churchyard with Stig and a load of us in Tavistock one time. It's
Right.
basically
Right.
a shoe leather does shoe leather cleaner thing, wasn't it? So
Yes. Well, no, bandage remover. When you
bandage,
break your arm,
that's it. Sorry, bandage remover. That's it. But
it it softens the material. Yeah.
that's quite right. But I was huffing away at this stuff, and I literally felt my body sinking into the ground and down into the graves down below, and I was kind of
Yep.
clawing upwards. I was going, oh, help, 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 help. And they're all looking at me. What's wrong? It's like I'm being swallowed by the earth.
Yeah, of course, of course. We would often have the same experiences in Burtley, Borley County Durham, near Chesley Street, 7-8 miles from Gateshead. We would have the same experiences. I saw one of my friends being shrank, and his Crombie coat just fell to the floor, and he was this little guy, and this guy shrank him, and he eventually, this guy was so ingrained into the glue sniffing world that he eventually did something really crazy so he could go to court, be sentenced by a judge, and go to prison because he would never have kicked in.
Yeah, yeah.
To get away from it, yeah. But when I think back to those times, the Zoth thing in particular, I used to do it in my bedroom at night, and I had this orange light would appear at the curtain, and I'd hear footsteps, like a guy with segs in his shoes coming down a hallway, a corridor. And the figure would get closer and closer and closer and closer. And with will, at my own will, I could go bang, turn it off.
Wow.
Because I never wanted him to come in the room. It was just a guy with a hat, dark clothes, a silhouette, if you like.
Yeah.
And it would get closer and closer and closer, and I would always turn it off right before he could get in the room. And it was male, not female. But yeah, it's altered states, definitely.
There was this guy, Steve Robinson, and he was the first singer for Disorder.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah.
That came along. Yeah. And it's not the Steve that you know. That's Steve the guitarist.
Steve Allen. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Allen. But Steve Robinson was the first singer. And he was this sort
right.
of, he was a reptilian sort of like punky kid that I bumped into pretty soon once we moved up into Bristol. You know, he had the Borstal Mohican, which was like the little Mohican about half an inch long.
Yeah.
Just for the guys that had just come out of Borstal. And he was violent. He was psychopathic, and he was a glue sniffer. So where we first moved into the squats where we were at, it was just off City Road, St Paul's. He'd come round and he'd have a bag and stuff, and he'd tell us that he was going to be sniffing and to lock him into the cellar downstairs.
Right.
So he'd ask us to lock him in and not let him out until it was done. And it would you just hear this guy screaming.
Wow.
Smashing into stuff, and then after everything had gone quiet, we'd open the door and he'd come out and he'd be bruised and battered, throwing himself against the walls, completely off his face, but calmed down by that time. So it's like weird stuff. Anyway, sorry, we've kind of gone off on a tangent there.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's my fault too. So we went there with that weird one, but the whole UFO thing, the whole thing about consciousness itself, and the way that we seem to be coming around to a more universal understanding of it, that everything is intimately connected with everything else, and that consciousness itself is imbued in all of this huge web of life. Obviously, the plants sense your intentions when they're going to water them or hurt them and all that kind of stuff. So everything is kind of a responsibility, and we could say we are all one another, but you look around and you go, actually, no, that can't possibly be possible. But unfortunately, it is, because there's so many about. You go, fucking hell, what a world we live in. And
absolutely, I'm constantly looking around when I come across absolute patheticism and stupidity, and I say to myself, how the fuck did that sperm win?
Yeah.
How did that sperm win?
But I'm kind of hoping myself that. Yeah, it is a bit fanciful, but you think maybe it's possible that like we're talking about the resonant frequency, the Schumann frequencies and all that kind of stuff. But the frequency of life itself may be able to be given a boost, whereby we can all begin to make that connection. Because if we could enter the slightly more altered state of being able to connect things with one another, then I think like you would be more empathic. You'd be more able to distance yourself from
absolutely
the whole network of evil that we've been enmeshed with for millennia.
Yes, you touched on this the other day. I told you about my obsession with being near a fire and getting away from electric and getting away from tech and just being near a fire, sitting next to a fire with me dog, you know, maybe smoking a rollie, a cigarette, and having a beer, and just literally doing nothing, saying nothing and doing nothing. I think we've all, you know, millennia ago, I think we all had those abilities. Have you ever done the test where, this sprang to mind just recently. I was on a bus in Plymouth once, and I was going from Plymstock, Elberton, into town, into Plymouth, near Brettonside bus station.
Yeah.
In Plymouth, and there was like 3 people on the bus, and I looked at this guy about 4 seats in front of me, and I'm saying to myself, in my mind's eye, I'm saying, turn round, turn round, turn round, turn round. And within 2 minutes on that bus journey, he turned round, startled, looked at me, and then turned around again. So with that little test that I did, without involving anyone, well, you know, without involving speaking to anyone or just doing it willy-nilly, I did it again in a library, in a public library, in Plymouth, and it worked again. And it wasn't like, you know, glaring. It wasn't. They didn't know I was even looking at them, but I'm sending these thought waves. Please turn round, turn round, turn round. And I've done that. I've successfully done that 3 times with unwitting participants, shall we say? And it's worked.
Yeah. It's like the thing, as I say, it's like being hidden from us is this fact that there's so much potential that we have. So it's like instead of that, we've become this subservient sort of slave race, really, of people that serve money and power. Because there's been another group of people who've learned how to both manipulate those energetic patterns themselves and simultaneously take away any relationship that we have with our instinctual relationship with our own personal power. And it's not, not power in an abusive sense, but power as in we are connected, you know, as
absolutely. You know what frightens me about this, you know, this subject we're talking about now, what frightens me about it is the opposition. Because you must have heard of the James Randi Foundation.
No, I haven't. No.
He's a guy that put up $1 million, and it's still there apparently. And he did this in the 60s, I think. It's still there. And his thing was, he was really anti-clairvoyant, anti-paranormal, anti-gnostic, you name it, anything out of the normal parameters of the current narrative of the society in which he lived. He put this $1 million up because he was very rich, and he said, if anyone can prove to me that the likes of Uri Geller or anyone else, if this is real, you can have this $1 million. And to date, no one has claimed it. But that doesn't mean, you know, that is not an argument to like what I said before. Fundamental science is really blind. You know, it's not a religion. It's we just cannot. People will not accept, which is their own path they want to take, but people cannot accept something they can't explain. And people, as a rule, and you know this, Rob, because you know this all too well, and I don't mean to patronize, you know this all too well, that people love to have everything cross-referenced, cross-indexed, and in a box and labeled. A neat little box that can be recognized. And that's the problem with the punk scene, that's the problem with the metal scene, that's a problem with music in general, that's a problem with everything, every single thing. And you know that to have this validation, whereas don't need a VIP pass, mate. Just don't need a validation. Just hey, this happened. How do we explain it? And also, you know, I've read a lot of interviews and stuff, even by yourself, and you say this, you know, without any modicum of intelligent conversation and dialogue. To have both sides of the argument looked at, people go straight for the hate and violence.
Yeah, but it's an instinctual need for security. So it's almost as though they have a reluctance to grow up and keep on examining what's placed before them. It's almost like they stop reading the book. At an early age, and they don't want to be doing that anymore because the problem with it is there's no certainties. And it's like I don't mind that there's no certainties, you know. It's like the adventure itself, which is interesting.
Absolutely. You know, we can look at the MK Ultra 50 tests from the 50s, 60s, 50s, MK Ultra, and we can look at all this other stuff. I said something to you the other day about how I've been trying, for years, I've been trying to train my mind to not accept signs, to not accept. Naomi Klein touches on this in her book No Logo, and Suzanne Capella touches it on this in her book the Pornography of Representation, and it's to train the mind to absolutely ignore and not even take in images and the advertising of the very things that keep us in a prison. And I think when you look at how we came since even post-industrialization in the 1900s, how we are so engineered and so brainwashed, and I mean by every aspect. Life could be so different, but we're so, and this is, I'm not saying we need a call for revolution. We do. There was a meme, what they called these memes. Someone sent me a meme the other day, and there's this guy talking about, the guy in England who got put in prison because he refused to pay the poll tax fee in 1989 or 1990.
Right.
And he was saying the poll tax riots actually brought about a change in government legislator for this tax. It's still things still come in, but enough people banded together to do it. And is that, I know we're not on soapboxes here trying to come across as vigilantes of rebellion and a change in the world, but we don't have to live this way. And if I think more and more people nowadays are realizing, there's something to this. What happens on TV, what we read in the newspapers, what happens on the internet, the way we're brought up at school, the whole life cycle of engineering, and I think more people are becoming aware of it, which I think is a damn good thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say that there's much more of a kickback now against mainstream media and all the traditional channels of so-called communication, which we've been used to using. There's so many people who have simply rejected the BBC and whatever else and all that, and they're getting their information through alternative media sources, which obviously in itself, you have to be careful where you go. And well, you do your own thing. You basically you use your own common sense, find out what different opinions basically is interesting. So I do believe that one of the byproducts of the past 4 years, which those people, if we want to be like that, don't like, is the fact that a lot of people have woken up, whether they wanted to or not. First of all, they didn't. And a lot of them were basically refusing whatsoever to look into things. And because we've all gone through this process now, some of us did this, some people didn't do it, blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. It's when we have to look back on it now. I think that's kind of what's waking people up, and they realizing what happened to me. What did I do back then? How did I become that kind of person? And I think that once you can open that door and be honest with yourself, then you've got a lot of potential to be able to move on. You say, and it begins to clarify the overview of the rest of it and how the machine has been working on you since the day you were born.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was I saw some terrible things and experienced some terrible things during the last 4 years. Extreme threats of violence from people from a person I didn't even know. Even after I kindly walked out of his way on a narrow little path in Somerset and picked up my dog because his dog was barking at my dog, and as he passed, he was, "You could kill my daughter. You could kill my wife." And I will chop your head off. I will, and this was an old guy, right? At least 68, 75. And I was just, wow. I mean, that's shocking. What drew him to be so full of hate? And then I remembered I was in France once, and this old woman come up to me and touched me on the top of my head. And she said, "You're letting out too much energy," which I always thought about. And she said, "You're letting out too much energy. You want to keep some back for yourself." And then someone else, this is just personal experiences, but someone else said, you're always gonna find angry people. And I said, why is that? And he said, because you're emanating something which is, there's an experiment. You put 100 people in a room, and you get like an animal, like a dog, and you put its owner in amongst the 100 people in the room, and the dog will find it within minutes. The owner.
Yeah.
This woman tried to tell me that being empathic and having these feelings, it doesn't make you special. It just means you feel more than Joe Blogs, which whatever, it's fine. I don't care. Whatever.
It's not always a bonus, is it? That's not.
No, it's not. It isn't. But I think that I'm not saying oh, I woke up years ago and I'm a chosen one or anything like this. It's just, it's all very interesting. And why does it happen to some and not to others?
Yeah. Okay, that's us out of the first section. I'm going to meet you in 10. We'll do the commercial break in between, pretend that we're advertising something that we don't have and that nobody wants. So see you soon. Okay, after those adverts for Evo Stick and Zoff, we can move on.
Don't make me laugh. I've got a bad back.
I'll put me fucking back out, man. Ooh.
Oh man. Oh, orange.
Me lumbago.
Go on. How are you, man?
How are you, man? Fuck's sake. No, that.
Anyway.
Right. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I shouldn't go into Geordie.
You can. You do a great Geordie.
I can do a really good Geordie if I try, like, man.
How are you, man? You've got to heat like a boss cooch. I'll tell you what, if he come in here with them clotty boots, I'll give you a York. And no, get out there and get out of the two.
I will. Hang on. Hold on a minute, man. I'm getting back into me theatrics, like.
Oh, you make me back hurt.
So
anyway,
right. This is something I'd like your opinion on, right?
Right.
A few weeks ago, we got hit by a bolt of lightning here. It's like we get often, just being next to the mountains, you get a lot of, look, there's a hailstorm, you get these intense hailstorms, and then often it'll be accompanied by lightning and thunder, like boom, boom, like the gods themselves are landing a hammer on top. And it was one of those ones where like the flash went, and it's like I was asleep pretty much, but the whole white just went boom straight through my brain, and the bang came straight off as well. So it's like, oh, that was right on top of us. It blew the phone out. It blew the modem. The guy next door had his laptop was lying on his chest. It burned a little hole near his belly button, and it exited out through his big toe. So he's kind of lucky to be here. But consequence of that was that we had like a week or so with no internet, with no real means of being in touch with people at all, because we got terrible like reception for mobile phones, so I don't tend to use it that much here. And the thing about that was like it was bloody brilliant. What we did is we had fires in the evening, sat down, read a book, did chatted with each other, have a hot bath, look after each other, all that kind of thing. It was brilliant. And it occurs to me that really it's like we bought into a lie, which was a convenient lie back in the 90s when we were offered this on this silver platter. We were offered this thing called the internet, and everything was to be everything was going to be seamless, and it was a great resource for learning things and getting in touch with people from school and all that sort of stuff that you hadn't been talking with for years or whatever, often for good reason. And it seems now that we're almost like at a fork in the road where we're being given a choice. I think our generation, and possibly the one below us, just below us, may still have their heads in the natural world. But my concern is that the ones younger than that, they've kind of bought into it so much that they don't realize they're captured, and that their future is entirely digital. So everything about the path that they're being led down is completely synthetic. So there's nothing real about it. There's nothing natural about it at all. They cannot properly interact with the natural world. So there's a dividing in humanity itself, and a choice to be made now. And for me, I was listening to this program the other day, and this Russian person going on about, we have the possibilities of being able to set off a megaton bomb above Siberia, but up in the atmosphere, so it doesn't actually hurt anybody, and there's no terrible fallout from that. But what it would do is create this massive EMP, which would knock
Yes.
the electromagnetic pulse, which would knock out the whole system worldwide. And I just thought, wouldn't that be fucking brilliant?
I know. I know.
Wouldn't-
I totally agree with you. The benefits that you can the beauty of reading a book and just being in that zone and reading a book, similar to exactly what you've just said, the benefits are limitless to the human brain and the human body. You're right about the generational thing. I know one thing I found weird on travels. I've been to some places where I saw no one with a phone, and I was quite shocked. I was quite shocked. I didn't see anyone on a screen, and it was the far reaches of Western Virginia or wherever, something like this, the Appalachians and things like this, and apart from the fact that the folklore there is just amazing, the Flatwoods Monster, the Mothman thing, all that stuff, but people who were talking in a tavern or an inn or outside or at some like jamboree or something, and there's no phones around, and it's like, wow, that's refreshing. Because it's
you normally see two people across from each other, both on their phones staring at a screen. It's like, what happened to you?
Isn't there a famous quote by someone? I don't know who said it, but I really enjoy it. I enjoy the quote. Nobody talks anymore because everybody's too busy communicating.
Oh yeah, there's that, isn't there?
But the benefits, we all know the benefits of the internet, blah blah blah. But really, it's our own demise.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing I'm questioning here. It is like, what are the benefits? I mean, here's you and I using it to be able to talk, and that's great, and then we can share that with some other people, and those people might think, who are those assholes, whatever. It doesn't. It's not important. We're not going to change the world with a conversation.
No.
And it's a conversation that we would have had anyway, in a pub somewhere,
There was one. There's a couple of personal things and other things I can just quickly touch on. I knew someone that was going to be savagely beaten up, as in seriously, possibly even murdered, seriously. And because they were in a different country, I had the means to send them a message and warn them not to go to a certain place, and they didn't go, and they're still alive. So there's that.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a one. How many people have done that? I don't know. Probably thousands, probably millions. But yeah.
Did you know that person as a consequence of the internet?
No, I met them in person, and I knew them, and I enjoy their company.
Yeah,
and they're a good person.
Yeah.
And they did something quite silly, not detrimental to anyone, certainly not physically, but they did something. They stole something because they were using, if you know what I mean, and they did it so they could get the smack to use, and it led to almost a contract being put on someone's head. But I warned him not to go to a certain place, and he didn't go, and he missed that whole fracas, which would have been awful for him. And we've got things like what's the other things? There are benefits, but if someone knows something, if someone's lost someone or someone's looking for someone or whatever, you can put it out there, and immediately on these platforms like what is it, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, any of these platforms, thousands can see it in a minute. Whereas if you put up lost dog and make posters and put them on Lamb Street posts because you've lost your cat or you've lost your dog, it'll be seen by those directly in the neighborhood. Whereas if we put up a warning on these platforms, it stretches further. So I do think that's a benefit for the greater good.
That's a fair point. I guess what I feel is that we kind of cast our net way too far, particularly in relationship to news and media, because it's we seem to bind ourselves up intimately with conflicts and situations on the other side of the world, which have essentially got nothing to do with us. And
This is
you
true.
think back in the old days, it would take two weeks for the news to reach you, by ship.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
time by which time everything has changed and it's run its course. It's done its thing. Now we're kind of we kind of we get ourselves too involved in other dramas that we can't do anything about, but
Do you know what this? Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
just being voyeurs of. And one of the consequences of that as well is this having to be, this whole self-righteousness of being involved with whatever the latest thing is,
This is true. Yeah.
in order to be what do they call it? It's uh oh, yeah, it'll lose me just now, but virtue signaling, yeah, that kind
Yes. Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
it's like I've got to be the first person to be able to put a flag up on a profile or pretend that I
Yeah.
know about something that I've got absolutely no idea about whatsoever.
Yes.
So it's I'm kind of more for shrinking back into what you can immediately affect in your immediate environment with the friends and family that you've got, because in a
Yeah.
coming back to this thing about the nature of reality, in a sense, it's like it's Schrodinger's cat, isn't it? It's like what
Yeah.
we things aren't happening unless we're involved
Yeah.
unless we're engaged with them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if all of our time and our energy is spent engaging with these nebulous kind of like ideas, then
Yeah.
we can't sit down and reconstitute who we are. We don't have any
Yeah.
time for ourselves. We have times for everybody else and their concerns, but even those things aren't
Yeah.
really in the way too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand. There's a lot of, I mean, I haven't got the means and the finance to do some of the things I've wanted to do in the past, in the immediate, 20, 30, 40, 50 years history of my being on this planet. But I do respect people who give up. Um, what I'm saying is, I like to look at the greater picture because it expands knowledge, and I love traveling because it expands knowledge and it expands our worldview. On the flip side of that, we've got charity begins at home, which I totally understand as well. But I've got nothing but respect for these people that go off, say like members who sign up for Sea Shepherd. I mean, fuck me, whales are some of the most sentient beings on this planet, and so when someone gives up their time and job and maybe even family life, whatever, I don't know, whoever, whatever, and goes off to join a ship that Paul Watson's got and try and stop these beautiful animals being killed. I kind of respect that, and it's miles away from their home. But I know what you're saying. I'm digressing. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. No, it was just a kind of just a thought really, because as I say, there's just this feeling at the moment that I mean, somebody I like to call a friend is John Lash, and he's the author of Not in His Image, and the kind of
yes, I'm familiar with John Lash. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Gnostic teacher, and I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of conversations with him,
Yes.
And he at the moment he is kind of like of the same sort of view, I think, which is, it's time to start gradually, or in some cases quite quickly, pulling out the apparatus, starting to unplug and
Yes.
getting back into the real life itself, because
Yes.
the enemy that we've got, the perennial enemy that we've had for who knows how many thousands and thousands of years, maybe it's like
Yeah.
maybe it's a cosmic thing, has always been the master of illusion and
Yes.
of being able to simulate. So
Yeah.
the whole thing about the computer and the digital world, it is the mouthpiece of that kind of energy. So what it does is it presents you something that looks like it's real,
Yeah.
that even can be super real, because it's got it's pixelated to a degree now where it's more real than real, but it never is. It's never the experience. So
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
the unique thing about us as human beings is like we do like these kind of things. We're kind of like attracted to the Googles, aren't we? Like this
Yeah.
spark, like magpies. Um,
Yes.
But it's almost like we need to give ourselves a slap now and say, all right, we're done with that. That time is over now, because if we keep on going down this, then the logical conclusion of that is all this kind of the talk that younger people have about, you'd be able to upload your consciousness to the cloud. It's like, that's all virtual. None of that. It's like there's people opting out of the actual experience of life itself.
Yes.
For the promise of some kind of like even non-visceral experience later on down the road. It's like it's all false. It's all lies.
Yeah.
And
are you familiar with that guy Ian Glasper? He writes on punking. Yeah. He was in I think the band was called 36 Strategies, and I got hold of one of their albums, and I really enjoyed the music and I loved the band. And there was a song on there, and it was all about social media and and how people are living their lives on a screen instead of living their own lives. So I guess in that aspect, it's really quite dangerous. And again, I'll say it seems to be my favorite word. The flip side of that, if you question that reality that is being served to us on a plate every second of every day, you'll get deleted. And that's and you're one of a few people I know, because you suffered it yourself with the Bandcamp thing. And I know someone else that, but because when we're not allowed to ask these certain questions, I'm sorry, I'm getting excited again. Quick analogy: I was at school, and in religious education class at school when I was a kid, I put my hand up and I said, she said yes, she. Put your hand down. What do you want to ask? And I said, you've just told us that creationism, we're all from Adam and Eve. She said, yes, this is correct. And so all I said was, in reply, I was 7 years old, and all I said was 8 years old, and I said, if that's true, is humanity a big string of inbred bastards? And for that, I got punished. I got the strap, the thick leather strap on both hands and my ass. And it hurt, and I cried.
Yeah.
I really did cry. And I went home and told me mum.
Yeah.
I told me mum about that, what happened, because this was pre-1981. And she was really angry, but she couldn't do anything about it. But asking questions really gets up the noses of.
Well, the punishment is built into the system, isn't it? It's like,
yes.
The way that you will be dealt with is you're going to be punished if you stray outside of the narrative.
Absolutely.
And, unfortunately, you and I think we're people that always have done that, and probably always going to get into trouble for that. But for myself, like, a lot of this stuff was blessings in disguise, because I've spent the last few years taking a lot of these hooks out of the flesh. And being very, very happy to do so, and going, well, I'd be fine if I was on my own. Me and the missus and the cats. That's all I really need these days. And it's been great to just remember, and by remember I mean bringing back the parts of the body and the mind that we don't normally use, because they're too disparate. They're shotgunned across our consciousness across various different platforms. So it's good to bring that back into place and say, okay, let's just find out who we are now, because we've done an adventure, and we've got some information, and we could sit down with that, and we could think about it. And you coming to the end of your last talk was about saying, like, be good to each other. It's that simple, isn't it? Really,
it is. It is. We embroil ourselves in all these things, and you think to yourself, okay, so there's a few. We're alive. Who knows how? Who knows why? But we're alive.
Yeah.
And we need warmth, heat, a bit of food. That's it.
Yeah.
We need to be cool when it's too hot. We need to be a bit warmer when it's too cold, and we need a cover over our head, and we need a bit of food. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that is it. But there are people out there who have weaponized all of that, and they made everything an uncertainty. So you get to the stage where the WHO are going to be dictating the sovereign states what their response must be for any made up pandemic in the future, which could including such things as the nebulous climate change, which is such a scam. But
absolutely.
it's we've given away our own autonomous authority to just time and time and time and time again. So
Yeah.
who can who can blame people for taking advantage of that? But they're not the kind of people I want to be hanging out with in my life.
No, exactly the same. I read something shocking some months ago about how if you're home by 2030 or even sooner, under the guise of the climate crisis, if your home isn't connected with this new system of electricity to phase out fossil fuels, you'll be fined 15,000. How can someone on universal credit, a single parent mother or a single parent father, or just someone living alone, how are they going to afford 15,000 and be fined because they're still using their wood burner at home?
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
that's
it's part of the scam is basically and then they'll, with the other hand, they'll offer the incentives by saying, well, there's a government grant scheme where we'll give you 80% of that, and the rest of it
yeah,
you need to borrow from us. And
yeah,
what we'll do is we'll pump that money back into the companies that we have shares in anyway, which are
yes,
all part of the whole scam itself. So that's it's basically people in the know making money. It's just another merry-go-round for them for them and their mates, basically. We've seen
yeah,
a free-for-all for the people that understand how that system works, and it's
yeah,
just entirely corrupt. We've seen the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor through to the very, very super rich.
yeah,
Pretty much in history now. And they've dissolved the idea of a middle class. The working class themselves are hated and reviled by both
yeah,
political parties. So there's just this weird there's kind of like a macabre feast going on where all
absolutely.
these ghouls are filling themselves and gorging themselves on whatever is left before we inevitably have to step off the platform of a failed fiat currency system.
Absolutely. The things that really make me feel sad. One of the things about our own countries, Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales, whatever, where the people who are in receipt of benefit are perpetuation that these are the problem in a society.
Yeah.
Whereas, and people believe that, and these people are ostracized because they're poor, and it's not. And people are so fooled into thinking that is, your typical Sun newspaper reading, log out, football supporting, jawhead that actually agrees with this narrative, and it's shocking. Like the homeless, the homeless are vilified, the people in poverty are vilified, and it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not that's not the
Not
deep
the
root
enemy.
cause
Yeah.
of the problem. The
Well, I
deep
mean,
root cause of the problem are the people who are making them like that.
yeah, you might. I mean, I do fall into that trap myself at times, particularly over issues like immigration at the moment, because of the way that it's fueled by the media. Because what they're telling you is that you have to hate these people. It's like, actually, no, you don't hate the people. You should be
Yeah,
looking past that, because that's just part of the narrative, which is being played really well at the moment. So
absolutely. Sorry, you've just interjected a question I've got for you. Just
yeah.
10 seconds. Sorry to interrupt. But of late, of the last few years, I keep on seeing these reports of Europe, the US, and even England, especially England, where lots of loads of men of fighting age are turning up. I don't know if you've seen these things or heard anything about it. And there was one particular story that really got me, and it was a guy not far from our own stamping grounds where we've been for years, like you, Tavistock, Plymouth and Somerset and whatever. And near a guy who owned a farm near Bruton, and he stopped being a farmer because I think the government subsidies for the farmers became so low, and he turned his whole land into B&Bs, and he had 150 B&Bs. All the toilets, sinks, bedrooms, double beds, single bedrooms, whatever. And the guy in question that I'm talking about came on a phone. He said, "Excuse me, Somerset accent," but he said, "I don't know how to work this thing, but here, I got something to tell you. I got something to tell you." And he explains how his daughter helped him make a video.
Hmm.
And he said he got a call wanting 140 or 147 of these rooms
Yeah.
for people. So he thought, God, great business, you know, because that was his business. Anyway, a couple of coach loads turned up, and then 3 days later he got a call saying there's going to be a shipment of some crates, and they need to be undercover. And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine. We got the outbuildings, we got the space." They all turned up on a farm near Bruton, Somerset. His son, who's an old guy, but his older son, he came on while this guy's making this video. I can try and find it again, you know, whatever, if anyone's interested out there. But he said he had a crowbar. He said, "I'm going to open some of those crates, Dad." And his father said, "Don't you do it." Anyway, he went off and did it. And he took the phone and videoed what he found in the crates. And you know what was in the crates?
AKs?
Yeah, exactly. And grenades. Yeah.
Well,
Thousands. Hundreds.
if you can find a video of that, I'd be interested. I mean, because that's a conjecture, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it would be a big thing if that's true. Something that you wouldn't be allowed to talk about anyway. I don't know. I mean, it's like, yeah, find that video if you can.
I'm going to really try and look for it. I saw it about 3 months ago, and it still bewildered me to this day. Yeah.
Because there was obviously this kind of like rumor going around. It's like, yeah, there are fighting age males turning up, blah blah blah. So
yeah,
you're going to get defensive. You're going to say, well, shit, you know, what about if all these people get together? But often you're finding that these are from disparate groups. You know, it's like Sunni and Shia or whatever as well. So people that don't naturally get on together. And they are encouraging people that come across now to join the forces and all that kind of stuff and opening the door for that. So there is some anxiety there.
The general consensus of the alleged conspiracy of this, which I've been not led to believe, but just listened to, and I'm still trying to make up my mind about it because I don't understand it, is that so many people point out there's no women or children.
Yeah,
it's all men of fighting age. There's no women or children.
Yeah,
and in connection with that, the alleged conspiratorial belief system in that is these people are going to be here for when the shit kicks off.
Well, yeah, that would be a concern, wouldn't it? Because we don't have any community cohesion left here. Well, all of the sort of indigenous identity has been taken out of people, beaten out of them, or threatened out. So, you know, it's a bad thing now to consider yourself, you know, Welsh, English, Irish, Scottish. So you have no cultural roots that are left to you at all. We're dispossessed in our own country. And you don't have to. Everybody now is far right because of that being labeled as, you know. And it's like traditionally, many of us came from a sort of what we consider to be a socialist background, and now you'll all of a sudden find that you're far right. Well, okay, whatever. If that's what that. But I think what's important and what a lot of people are missing, because they always see it as a dialectic, as being like one thing versus another thing. So it fuels the rise of people like Tommy Robinson, who's basically I think Tommy he's a false flag, really. And you know, what he does is he takes the concerns and aspirations of normal everyday working people, which they've got a right to have those concerns, and he's kind of weaponized them in a particular direction. And you look behind him and you say, well, who does he work for? What are his allegiances? And as far as I'm concerned, they're not with this country, and they never have been. And the point about that being like, he's not asking how did these people get here? Who started this? Nobody's asking that question. And when you actually trace back and you look at the NGOs and all that kind of stuff, they do have some things in common which people don't like to talk about. And you know, they're the things that we get into trouble for even noticing, because the punishment is for the people that notice, that are going one stage past the conventional narrative that's being fed to you, which is always like about us against them, against us against them, blah blah blah. You know, it's the normal sort of like divide and conquer, divide and rule thing. So it's always to distract you from the process itself. So what's
attract and distract?
It's the Barbara Lerner Spectre. If you look, that video, which came from the 90s, it's like that's still so valid, you know. And it's not to demonize a particular people or anything like that. It's to say this is the process, and there's a reason why that's being done. Now, the people that are doing this think that it's a good thing, They think
Yeah.
that this is making the world a better place, but
Yeah.
that's because they have a misunderstanding of what it is to be,
Yeah.
you know, to be who we are. And
Yeah.
to I don't know whether you feel the same way, but you know, I've always had I've always had an intrinsic sort of understanding of my own sovereignty, but also my place within my culture, if you like, you know. And it's not that
Yeah.
I love everybody around me in that culture. It's like there's so many assholes out there, but you know, I'm an English born man from a Celtic background that feels
Yeah.
strongly a connection with nature and with the earth and with all of
Yeah.
the mythological cycles and everything that's associated with that. And I'm supposed to feel bad about that. It's like I'm not waving a flag here. I'm just
Yeah.
saying this is who I am. And
Yes.
I
Exactly.
don't like seeing that being taken away.
Well, you made me just think of something there with exactly what you've said. Someone showed me a photograph of a street in Bradford, England,
Mm,
and you know the typical road signs that are on every street corner in every cul-de-sac in every street in England. They're black. They're white signs with black Helvetica type font with a black line around them.
yeah.
Them signs. Showed me a photograph of a sign, and it clearly said no white, and it wasn't photoshopped. Allegedly, it's a proper sign, and it's in somewhere in Bradford, and it says no whites allowed after 7 p.m.
Mm, yeah.
And I've spoke to a guy who said he stood next to that sign. He said it wasn't 7 p.m., but he stood next to it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know the mindset of the people of that area who had that sign made, like a
Mm,
cast iron sign, a proper council sign like that, and actually emblazoned it on a street corner.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'd like to know the mindset of the people who actually did that. I would. What I'm saying is, I would. What I'm saying is, when in Rome, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But also, in so many ways, it's our own fault because what's obvious is that our Achilles heel is the fact that we're decent people and we want to do the right thing and we want to take care of people. And when we see
Yeah,
people suffering or when we see them without a place to live and all the rest of it, our
yeah,
natural instinct has always been, you come here, we'll feed you, we'll look after you, you know? And that's
yeah,
it's a good and it's a noble thing, but also it's our weakness.
yeah,
Um, but it's been
yeah,
exploited by people that understand that. So what they do
yeah,
now is they don't just take that for granted, but they'll also demonize you if you start questioning anything about it. So
yeah,
we're stuck in this kind of position where you're supposed to feel bad about thinking naturally, you know, there's something wrong with this picture. It's
yeah,
you know, it's ridiculous, but it's brilliant. It's like sophisticated propaganda now that
yeah.
we're all victims of. So
Yes,
what do you do? I mean, yeah,
yeah,
that's the problem. It's like so you have a choice. It's like I was lucky enough to go through my own process and to have all the labels thrown at me. So you know, so I say now, yeah, I'm all of those things you think I am, and that's okay. If that's the
yeah,
word that you use for it, then I'm whatever you want it to be. But
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still the same person. All the stuff that you're saying doesn't make any difference at all. So
yeah,
again, this thing about, you know, you your housewife or your sort of elderly person in a wheelchair now is all of a sudden far right because they go out and they demonstrate about stuff and say something's not right with my country.
yeah,
It's Mate, we are coming
yeah.
to the end of this other episode, I'm afraid. It's just, you know, we're going deeper
Uh,
into things and
there
I'm in
was,
the way it's going, you know?
yeah, I know. There was three other plates. There was three other plates. One was music. One was
Okay. Yeah. So we've got we've got music. We have State of the World, and we've kind of been beating around that one. UFO phenomena, we've had a good dip
yeah.
into that, and we could go back that we could talk for hours on that, I'm sure.
Could I quickly mention consciousness again? Just one
Yeah.
more point.
Yeah.
So ages ago, many years ago, in a magazine, I read an interview with, I think it was you and Stig, and you mentioned how the band was all connected on stage during performance because, as you know, the concentration, and it seems to erupt in this invisible zone of connection between all band members.
Hmm.
Could you possibly is the word extrapolate? Could you
Yeah.
put some emphasis on that? because I have also witnessed this too on one occasion. I've witnessed many weird things while playing live. But once I had, but I can't put it into words. Could you exemplify on it?
Yeah. I think we'll be talking about the same thing, which is almost like with this the recent Amoebics tour. We went over to LA, and we would practice for a week with Roy Mayorga. Like he was very particular about making things exactly so, and we'd never had that kind of discipline before. So you get into a place where you're running on automatic.
Yes.
And so you can do the performance, but you can remove yourself from that and watch yourself doing that thing.
Yeah. Yes.
And realize that everything is in its place and doing exactly what it's doing. And you can look at other members of the band and realize they're doing that too. It's almost like they've left their body.
Yeah.
It's like the process is doing itself. And
Roy's always struck me like that. He's like he's a colonel, but doing those kinds of things. I can see that when I watch him play drums. I'm the same. I'm the same, especially the last 9 years, 10 years. I'm even more so.
You've always been strict, though, haven't you? You've always been a very strict master when it comes to bands.
It's not to be to come across as like the ruling overlord. But
no.
When people don't give a song just what it needs, and the sections aren't correct, it saddens me and it makes me feel sad.
Yeah.
Fortunately, these days I'm in a band with 3 guys, and they get it, and they strive for that too. So it's amazing. But sorry.
No. You've described that well too. That's what it is. It seems to be like you're trying to be good at what you do. And you're trying to get to that period where the thing does itself, because it's reached the right pitch of how it is.
Yes.
One thing that haunts me throughout my life is this: I can never do something perfectly, and I suppose that's the problem with it. It's the whole creative process. It's like I can make really good swords now. I'm really good at this.
Yes.
I'm never happy with it. The customer will be delighted, and their whole life they'll be like, yes, this is a wonderful thing. It's like, sure, but I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to.
Do you know what? I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same with the bad songwriting I've done for many years, plus building a pond in a garden or repointing a wall, using sand and cement, or building something, or working with anything, working with an angle grinder or chainsaw work or anything. And I'm never 100% happy with it. It's always striving to be better.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the rebellions that could come about as well is a remembering the idea about excellence, and that it's not something that we should excuse. We should always try and achieve, because the current way of looking at society is everybody has a victim card or a way out of doing their best. That they can wave and say, oh well, it's because of such and such. It's like, no, you've got a job to do here. You just need to figure out what it is and do it to your very best of your ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, absolutely. I got really tired really quite quickly in the 80s. Actually, I'm thinking back now. It isn't just the noughties. It's even in the 80s. I got really very tired of people saying, like band members. This is in the case of music. Band members saying, "Oh, that'll do. That's ready to play live." No, it's not. Yeah. We need to. It's not. It's not ready at all. When I moved to Devon and Plymouth, I invented this thing with a band I was in called Nero Circus, and it was called The Test.
Yeah.
And to strip it down and make it really easy to understand. Okay, so there's 4 people in a band, right? Or say 5 people in a band, whatever, 4, 3, whatever. The drummer's got the hardest part because the drummer has to be there the whole time, but not necessarily so. When a track is believed to be ready to be performed or recorded live, you're all in the room, and this can go on for weeks or even months. You pick a member to play his sections or her sections with the drummer. The track, everyone believes the track's ready to be recorded. So therefore, the general consensus should be everyone knows that track inside out and each other's parts.
Yeah.
When one person fucks up, they have to go back to start and do it again. And but just by playing by themselves, because everyone else the consensus is everyone knows the track. And we did this, and that band got so tight, it was stupid. And then I took it to a new level. We actually rehearsed in darkness with just the ambient. Hello.
Oh, that's it. We're out of time.
Oh, shit. Okay. Damn. All right. Damn it.
Next time, let's do this again, eh?
Okay, yeah, because there's so many other things. Yeah, let's do it again.
Thanks for being here.